Whether your boundaries are wide open or whether you have high levels of boundary, you have boundaries. So in healthy relationships, we're understanding what is our future goals. We also need to understand what the impact of today's choices are, actions and reactions. And so again, going back to the brain, when we're weighing the pros and cons or weighing the impact of our choices today, we're developing our ability to set goals, to stick to goals, to have healthy boundaries, to use our voice. We need to have the conversation about sexual activity as well. What is the impact of sexual activity? Traditional sex ed talks about basic plumbing, right? It really looks at you just as a basic body, whereas I want you to kind of step back from that traditional approach, and I want you to look through the lens of heart and mind and body. And I want you to see yourself with that whole value perspective. Let's talk about the mind. You have boundaries. Whether your boundaries are wide open or whether you have high levels of boundary. I have a pyramid that I show, and right at the top, it's full lockdown. Honestly, some people choose like a celibate lifestyle. That is a true choice that some people have. And then there's right down at the bottom, I sometimes call it Tinder lifestyle. So who cares who, when, where? So what are the different layers of boundaries within that? We need to think through that, and you need to process the impact of sexual activity through your mind, understanding your choices so that you can set boundaries for yourself. So at the top, some people choose like a celibate lifestyle. It's your choice, right? If you want to. Then down, starting at the tip of the pyramid, we have no dating at all. Some people choose no dating. Then some people choose kissing only. That's their boundary. And then their line is nothing more. Then some people choose everything but, right? And then down we can go to sex only in relationships. So it's like serial monogamy, faithful to one person as you're dating that person, then it breaks off and you're going to another person. And then at the bottom, it's again, no boundaries whenever the opportunity presents itself. So let's look at that pyramid and think, what is the risk involved and what is the benefits of each of those choices? Your boundaries that you choose may change at different areas of life. So maybe you're in school and you're like, you know what? I really want to just focus on my school. I really feel like I need to figure out who I am as an individual. And maybe at that point in life, you're like, you know what? I'm going it alone right now. And then maybe later on in life, you're like, you know what? I'm in a relationship now and I'm going to think through, maybe I'm okay with kissing. But then again, you can break down kissing. You're like, kissing on the cheek, kissing on the lips, French kissing, etc., right? Think it through for yourself, because in the moment, you got all those feelings going on, right? The limbic system is taking over, right? It's not your pros and cons, let me think how this impacts my future brain, that is going to be thinking then. So you got to use this. You have to prime your boundaries before you get into a relationship. And again, going back to using your no, use that no to test out a relationship, because if you don't have a no, that's not a healthy relationship. So at the top of the pyramid, we have no dating. And now this is common in different cultures where arranged marriages happen, right? But to tell you the truth, this is what my brother and his wife did. What are you talking about? How can you get married or just have, no dating until marriage? That's the boundary there. So they had been friends for like a decade. They knew each other really well. They knew how each other treated the people in their life who were closest to them, the familiar faces. They knew that the other person's character had integrity because they had seen how they acted when they thought no one was watching. They'd been friends for like a decade, and then one day they went out for a drive, and then one person, I don't know who it was, said something like, I think I have feelings for you. And then the other one's like, I have feelings for you too. And maybe we should start dating. And then one of them, I'm not sure who, said, well, why should we date? We already know each other, so let's get married. So I'm not kidding. 40 days later, they got married. They now have 5 children and have been married for, I think it's 15 years. So yeah, it can happen. So we go down a step then. Sometimes people have kissing as their boundary, right? So whether it's no kissing or, it's a kiss on the cheek, okay? Is French kissing okay? You have to think through this for yourself. This was my boundary. because I actually like dating. So I actually think dating is a great idea because there's a whole different relationship dynamic that's going on there. And I was not ready to jump in with both feet to getting married. So my boundary was like, I needed to be dating for at least a year. So my husband and I started dating, and then he started talking about wanting to get married. And I was like, no, we're not talking about that yet. So what he decided though, kudos to him. He was a teen, but he understood, without the neuroscience and the brain analogy here, he understood that this brain, the brakes were not fully developed yet. He understood that the biological engine worked pretty good though. So it really doesn't take a lot for your body to figure out how to go all the way. It's kind of like a Ferrari with tricycle brakes, right? You got to understand your own self. Understand how well do your brakes work, right? And so he understood that he wanted to give himself a buffer zone. So he came to me in our dating relationship and he said, "Okay, how about we don't kiss?" At this point now I'm actually attracted to him. So I respected that what he was saying. I actually thought it was romantic because he's come to me now and he said, "You know what? I want to have this boundary in our relationship." So I heard what he said and I respected that boundary. And I felt like it was actually cherishing me as a whole individual. Because if you think about it, in a relationship, if you have a foundation of heart and mind communication, and respect and value there, do you think a body connection can come pretty easy, right? So if you have a foundation of communication and respect, do you think a physical relationship would develop in a healthy way? I think so, right? Let's turn it around though. What if you start with a physical relationship? That biological engine just takes over, right? Do you think communication and respect, the heart and mind value and respect there, are going to automatically grow and be a healthy component if you start with the physical component, with the sexual activity? I think it's going to be a lot harder that way. So I felt like it was romantic for him to come to me and say, my goal is to not have sex before I get married. I want that to be you're the one and only. And so we're not even gonna kiss. So yeah, we dated for a year and a half and our first kiss was a week before our wedding day. And yeah, it was special. Going back to that pyramid, the kissing boundary area, you have the levels within that, right? Again, think through it for yourself. What level of kissing are you okay with? I think you have to get your brain processing all those questions because they're real questions, right? And they're real boundaries you have to think through. So the next section is that yellow section that says everything but. So everything's on the table or bed or whatever it is, except for actual intercourse. Here's my question with this. I have a couple friends that they chose that boundary. I knew quite a large group of people who chose the everything but. Save sex till marriage, but this isn't sex, so that's okay. How many in this group of say 20 people do you think were able to hold to that boundary? Here's the thing. Your biological engine, once you start flipping the switches, flip this one on, and you get the engines revving and everything's going, how well are those tricycle brakes gonna hold? So if you're one of those people, you're like, you know what, my brakes are great, we're good to go, then more power to you. You choose the boundaries that you think you're comfortable with. But I think for the majority of people, again, respect the power of that biological engine that drives towards sexual activity. Your body knows what to do, and it's designed to propel you forward, right? In that group of about 20 people, I'd say only 2 people were able to hold to that boundary. Because when you start flipping all the switches, eventually it's all systems go. Choose your boundaries wisely. I would recommend whatever your ultimate boundary is, give yourself a buffer zone in there. Okay, so the next boundary, some people choose, I'm okay with sex in a relationship. So I'm gonna be faithful to this person because I'm dating them. I just feel so close to them. It just makes me feel so bonded. Because here's the thing, sexual activity actually floods your brain with bonding hormones. and you actually will see that person differently. If somebody has a boundary like that, you have to think, what are the benefits? So some people have told me things like, I feel close to that person, I just really love being with them. But then what are the risks too? In a situation where you're bonding to someone, it's like when you share a secret, right? If you share a really deep secret, part of your soul with someone, you feel closer to that person. Sexual activity is like sharing a deep physical secret, and you feel bonded to that person. But what happens when that bond breaks, right? So take, for example, like what if you have a pet? So this is kind of a pathetic example, but hopefully it gets you thinking about that. So you have a pet, and you care for that pet, and you protect that pet, and you love that pet, and you feel a bond, right? And the pet runs away and disappears. And you're like, okay, well, that's crappy. My pet's gone. So you get another pet, and you pet that pet, and you care for that pet, and you're like super bonded because your pet was with you all the time, and that pet gets hit by a car, right? So let's fast forward 20 pets down the road. You've had many bonding experiences. 20 pets down the road, do you think you're gonna be able to bond with that pet as strongly as you were with the first pet? I would say no. And psychologist Dr. Gordon Neufeld talks about, he's an attachment expert, internationally respected, and he talks about our heart has the ability to perceive a wounding environment. So if the heart is experiencing loss after loss after loss after loss, it starts to put that wall of protection around. But here's the thing, your heart does not differentiate between sad feelings and happy feelings. So what happens as your heart walls off, as your capacity for sadness decreases, yeah, okay, you might be like, oh, that pet is gone. Big whoop-de-doo, I'll get another one, right? You might become callous to the loss, but you also lose the capacity for deep joy in that bond. Saying that, we can go to the bottom level of boundaries, which I sometimes call the Tinder relationship, where people are okay with calling anybody up. Huge risk involved there, right? Number one, you don't know if the person you're meeting is a serial killer or not, right? I know people that met up with people on Tinder and ended up getting raped. Don't put yourself in those dangerous situations. Like, a victim is never responsible for the rape, but you know, just like when we get into a car and we put a seatbelt on, there's some little things we can do to try to help add safety to our relationships. What might the benefits of a Tinder type relationship be? What are the risks involved? List them out. Think it through. What are the benefits now? What are the benefits long term? What are the risks now? What are the risks long term? And go through each of those boundary levels so that you're making an informed choice about what you want and what you want for your future. So once you've understood your boundary, this is what I want my boundary to be. Again, a healthy relationship will give you courage to use your voice. So if you can't have that boundary discussion, relationship's not mature enough to go there.